the Tri-County chairs had a meeting with representatives from AMR regarding challenges for timely ambulance transport across our region. The meeting went longer, but that's because we were having some really good problem-solving conversations. It is a tough situation, as we've discussed before, in all spheres, but including with paramedics and EMTs. There's a national, state, and regional workforce shortage. This will be a 2-year problem. I learned a lot about what it takes to earn your certification for paramedics. If you have a 4-year degree, if you have a degree already, doesn't matter what kind, then you can go through training and get your certification in 1 year. If you don't have a degree, it takes 2 years, and in that 2 years, you earn an associate's degree. So we talked about a lot of the, I don't want to use the word peculiar. Could you say that again?
Peculiarities.
Peculiarities.
Sure.
The uniquenesses across each of the counties is really what I should have said. The AMR reps for each county, as well as the Northwest region, were very forthright. There are some other options that were discussed. Hats off to Adrienne Donner of the Washington County team. She's exemplary in terms of knowing the ins and outs for our community, but also working very collaboratively with her peers in the other counties. So I just wanted to fill you in on that. Were there any other informational updates from other commissioners? No. Okay. Rolling agenda. I want to just turn your attention to our latest rolling agenda. We have some big topics coming up. I'll be discussing more of that a little bit later. Next week, public safety and justice briefing. It's going to be awesome. Our team has been putting in a lot of collaborative energy together to present the complete ecosystem of public safety and justice to us. Be here. It's going to be great. It's a pointer. I'm going to be using it later. I will put it down.
Slim could reach over and knight Roy if he.
Kind of reminding.
Would you like to be knighted?
Tell her this.
The following week, October 17th, we'll be going over the public safety local option levy and the library local option levy replacement planning efforts. That's going to be really cool as well. October 24th, Vice Chair Rogers and I will each be away. Who is the prior vice chair?
Jerry.
Thank you in advance for running the meetings that day.
I've got it on my calendar already.
Yay! And then if you just fast forward to look to November, I mean, our team's done a really good job of laying out our business for us. I do want to highlight that Friday, November 3rd, we have the annual meeting with the Housing Authority Committee. So that hopefully is on your calendars. Then we'll go over the economic development work plan on the 7th and further capital planning. So yeah, really exciting stuff. And we only have 2 business meetings in December. So we've got some important things to wrap up before the end of the year. So, just some highlights from the rolling agenda. Okay.
So, Madam Chair, also included in the packet was the draft schedule of the 2024 meetings.
Yes.
To go over and lay out that the highlights we're looking to cancel the January 2nd meeting. That first Tuesday, just 'cause it's right after the New Year's holiday on Monday. And then we were going to replace that with January 30th, and that will be the evening meeting that month. So you'll meet the 16th, the 23rd, and the 30th. So we will meet on that fifth Tuesday of January.
For the regular business meetings, but we'll also have the work session on January 9th. Yep.
Correct.
Yep. And then for March with school, school break, we'll have the evening meeting on March 19th. And then canceling the July 2nd meeting, as we usually do, and then so forth. In addition, Kevin's also laid out the roundtable schedule for us. So 2024 is starting with a bang. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Easy topic next. AOC dues. Could we bring up the presentation?
Yep.
Was I supposed to? I sent it to you.
Yeah.
Oh, phew. I all of a sudden thought I did something wrong. No, it's been published. So oh, do I need to go up here? Oh dear, now I have control of the slide.
Clicker and a pointer and a gavel.
File service right there.
Yeah,
Comment.
sure, absolutely.
I'd just like to make a comment about AOC dues as we move forward. We were all at the District 8 meeting yesterday. I just want to say that I'd like to see us focus this conversation on the dues, not on the value of AOC. And the reason I say that is Catherine's outline here and the work that we did down in Klamath Falls was about the dues. And I think yesterday's conversation got sideways. And when I reflect on it, it was about value and purpose, not about dues. So I'm just putting that on the table right now, that I think we all around this table agree about the value. So if we can stay focused on the structure of the dues, I think we'll be more effective. Is that a fair comment?
It's not unfair.
Okay.
Yeah. So why are we talking about AOC dues? Okay, there's some other power I need to have. It's on.
Mhm.
Maybe it's not on. Okay, Shazam. We're going to just have a brief highlight as to what the structure is, our 2023 current year dues situation, the request from the AOC Board of Directors, and hopefully achieve our commitment, which they've asked for in advance of next Monday's board meeting. Okay, a lot of words on this slide. But I wanted to make sure that I did my part to give you the history. Here you go, Commissioner Rogers. The history of the dues and how there was prior work done to move the AOC dues construct from one that really not too many people understood at all. It had so many moving parts. At the same time as trying to come up with a clear construct, a lot of work was done to get clarity and openness with the books of AOC and all of the accounting. So both of those things were done in parallel. I want to give a lot of credit to then Commissioner Jessica Vega Peterson, now Chair Vega Peterson of Multnomah County. She spent a lot of time with colleagues, other commissioners at AOC to put together a new construct so that we could have a dues construct that put the organization back on stable footing. We voted on that in the November 2021 business meeting. I voted for it because it was a construct that I understood. I thought it reached all the goals that were outlined in terms of being equitable, fair, and predictable. It wasn't until I looked at the construct later in the year of 2022 that I realized, oh, this isn't predictable, because our dues had a wild swing on them, a much larger proportion of impact than I had expected. And in my opinion, it was based on, well, AOC needs this many people to do the work and this much budget. So it sounded very straightforward in terms of a very simple single-digit budget increase. Well, that single-digit budget increase came to a pretty high percentage increase for us. So that's the data that I brought to you. I also spoke up at the annual meeting about it in 2022, kind of fell on deaf ears, and then brought the problem to you. We wrote a letter in January. I continued to champion difficulties with the construct. And so there were special meetings with the Finance Committee this year. And it's all led to a lot more people understanding the disproportional nature of the construct. Commissioner Treese, have I fairly represented that? Okay. So just a short reminder. What is the construct? And I've taken this right out of the slides that were presented to every commissioner, or every commissioner had the opportunity of understanding the construct at a town hall that AOC held. So we don't need to spend a lot of time on it here, but there's a base fee. They use, once you take the budget and the total base fees, then the remainder is split between a proportion of the county's assessed value compared to the rest of the state, similarly with population. Of course, our revenues don't have a relationship to either of those proportional steps. So this is a slide that was in your AOC packet yesterday that shows the 3-year comparison of dues, and it's also in your slide packet for today. And it just shows how things have really gone up for us. But what I didn't comprehend until it was pointed out at the retreat by Craig Pope is all those figures in the red are other counties where their dues have been going down. And he spoke up and said, well, seeing that just shows how inequitable the construct has been. So that's why I put it in here.
And I would add to that there was a lot of head nodding around the table, that when you see a chart with that much red on it, something's not right.
Yep. So as Commissioner Treese said previously and again today, but I'll say it in my words, she said it far more eloquently. We earned a lot of credit for showing up and participating. So here's our situation explained. Can I look over your shoulder?
Sure.
So the first row is 2021. It was hard to explain and understand. 2022 was the first year of the new construct. Our dues under the new construct meant that we were paying 34% more than the prior year. But moving forward, it should be predictable. Then the 2023 construct proposal came through, and there was a 20% change. I was like, wait a minute. So we discussed the situation and how our revenues were only going up 4%. So we all agreed that we would pay a 4% increase. That leaves a difference of just over $22,000. So
Last year.
for this year's
For
dues.
this year, yeah.
So we'd sent that letter in January. At least Commissioner Treese and I had a meeting with several AOC reps at dinner one night, and I can't even remember the circumstances for that. And based out of that, they learned a lot more about our finance situation. And so they asked if I would put that in writing. So I wrote a big, long memo that you all saw explaining our context. That was March. Haven't heard anything since. We did participate actively in special finance meetings in April as well as in June. A lot of work going into trying to ensure folks understood the construct and the impact. Then we went and participated in the legislative committee retreat and the board of directors retreat in September.
There was also meetings that the two of us held with AOC and their consultant in the dues
Yes.
structure. So, and
Yes.
there were at least two of those meetings. So it's been a long road.
Yep. And as you heard yesterday, I'm really sick of dues for AOC. But I have to bring all of this to closure. They asked, the board of directors had this on the agenda, the Washington County 2023 dues on their agenda at the board of directors retreat. And once again, Commissioner Pope spoke up right away and said, well, if we waive the $22,000 increase for Washington County, then we want the same deal, and other counties probably will too. Now, of course, their increase is very small compared to our increase, but nonetheless, the point was made. And he suggested, well, why don't you just pay the $22,000 over the standard AOC time period of 4 years? And I said, well, I haven't thought of that. I'll take that back to my colleagues, which is why we're here today. So, but our efforts also resulted in multiple proposals for how to finance the organization in the upcoming budget year. So what the board of directors discussed, and Commissioner Treese, I can't quite remember if they are recommending to move forward to the membership or if that vote will happen on the meeting on Monday. But there was at least some kind of vote to use the scenario where every county's dues will go up by 5%.
Based on freezing the formula,
Yes, freezing the formula to the 2023 level.
which would take care of the red on all those red and black numbers that you saw on that former chart. And that was, I'd also ask you to remember that that September meeting was ahead of our District 8 meeting yesterday. So there wasn't, and Multnomah County was not represented in Klamath Falls. So there was no discussion about the impact of the cap on Multnomah County. And that's the discussion that you heard yesterday, because JVP pointed out that their dues actually went up.
Well, at that point, I think just 3 of us were there.
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
think it's important to point that piece out. So I believe that there's going to be more work back at AOC to determine the exact impact of the cap on that situation. So the recommendation for scenario 2 occurred in September before District 8 meeting. So that's just so that you understand what the steps were.
So I'm trying to be clear. Today's topic is about repayment of the 2023 dues. Okay, so we'll come back to
Okay,
next
that's
year's, okay? So for the repayment of the 2023 dues, what their ask is that we repay the dues over 4 years. So that would mean that we have 2024, 5, 6, and 7 before the end of 2027 to repay. Yep.
with no interest.
No interest, yep. And so that's the letter. Oh, and Ms. Angie and Mr. Anderson, I realized you might not have seen that, so I made a hard copy for you. So I sent you all the letter, and it's in the packet. And so I just tried to be very clear that with this letter, prior to the upcoming October 8th meeting, we commit to pay the full $22,304.94 amount within a 4-year payment period before the end of 2027. Any questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Oh, I didn't have
Oh.
a question. I just think we're punting the thing down.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out, you did a lot of work on this, and it seems to me like we are kind of back to where we started, because we're paying, we've agreed to a 5% increase on what we consider to be an inflated base of the 23 dues. So I need to know from you how you feel about all this work that you put in there, and this is what we got. Do you think this was worth your time, and do you think it was, I guess,
So I understand why they can't go back to the 2023 base level, right? Because time has passed and that's not how the operations have gone. Okay. So I understand why the 2023 dues level is what we're using as the new baseline. Okay. I'm frankly just swallowing the fact that there's a $22,000 cost to that. But the fact that we can repay it over 4 years seems reasonable to me. Then there's, what about moving forward, right? So what we have heard is that they're working to ensure that year over year, the budget is only increased between 3 and 5% per year. What they've come forward with is a 5% increase for this year and multiple proposals. As your representative at the business meeting, I'm prepared to vote based upon your opinion, but at this juncture, I would suggest we vote in the affirmative for the 5%. That's scenario 2. For scenario, whatever number it was, that has the 6%, I'm like, no, I'm not going to vote for that. I understand what that construct is. It's with the cap, but I think we have spent more time in highlighting the unfairness of this. And for me, it's just like, no.
Could I
Of course.
answer your question as well? And I think the question is, was there a win in this? And I think that's the question. The win is on the potential of scenario 2 passing at the board meeting. And that stops the formula from continuing to hit us harder than other counties. So therein lies the win. It's buried in there, but that's the win. Is it frustrating? And Catherine and I were sitting next to each other at the AOC meeting, and there was more than once that I leaned over and said, "I don't think we should have to pay the whole but I think I agree with Catherine that we need to do that. We need to accept the frozen base of 23 dues with the future of a 3 to 5% increase. So instead of looking at the 20+% increases that we've experienced over the past couple years. So that's the win, is moving away from that formula, freezing the dues, and looking to a future of 3 to 5% increases. So, and it, like I said, it's a little obscure what the win is, but that's, for me, that's the win. And what we're asking today, Catherine's absolutely right. We're asking today for approval to pay back the $22,000. And depending on what the vote is in November, we'll have another discussion about where we are with dues. If we go with scenario 2, I think my vote would be to accept that and move forward with AOC.
Now, Commissioner Willey, you're right to look forward and say at the November 2024 meeting, so for the 2025 dues, if the majority of counties wants to move forward with just using the construct where we once again have wild percentages, I wouldn't vote to support that. And I think we can count on other major sponsoring counties. There are 6 of us who provide greater than 50% of the revenue. I don't think we would be alone.
And to underscore that was the reaction to the slide that you saw that showed whose dues went down, whose dues went up. And there was generally a very strong feeling that if that's the result of this formula, that's not what we want to see moving forward. So from my position, what Washington County has done is that we have worked hard to point out what the flaws in that formula are for all of us, for the entire AOC, and that's the other win. So, and Catherine started the work, and I've been working on it through as well. So that's
Yeah.
the other win.
And having Commissioner Treese active on this has, I think, really helped me stay engaged to get it across the finish line. Yeah.
So is Jackson County out?
Yes, that cost us, that was part of the August presentation, and I meant to go upstairs and get my copy of that presentation. That cost us at least $11,000.
Who's us?
Washington County. Yeah, because the way they,
Their dues are 68 grand, and guess what? It got reallocated.
Yep.
Sure, yes.
But
It just seems to
didn't it
be.
get reallocated in the formula?
yep,
And so what happens is, again, that was a double hit for us.
Yeah, everybody paid.
No, not everybody. That's the whole point, is that it was unfairly allocated. So I
Hence
guess,
all the red numbers.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
What just seems to me, and we don't want to rehash this because I'm going to be in support of us paying these dues over a period of time and we move ahead. But it just seems to me like all the rest of us put together a budget. For us, it's based on the revenues we anticipate getting, but in this particular case, it seems like the tail's wagging the dog. They put together a budget that is significantly increased from the prior years. And then they assess dues to all of us based on a budget that they want. So if we had this case, it'd be great. We'd put together our budget and we'd say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is what your new tax assessed is. Doesn't work that way.
The executive director has also gotten that message. And hence her commitment moving forward to have a budget that only increases between 3 and 5%. And as they did this year, they did a lot of work to bring in additional revenue, as we heard about yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Yamhill County. They should be screaming the loudest. They went from 31,000 to 41,000 to 43,000 in basically a 2-year period of time. And how come they aren't standing there holding their hands? You know, saying, go get them.
Couldn't tell you.
Anyway,
I
maybe
think
they have money.
it's my impression that part of the reason that we don't have some hand holding is that there was a lack of understanding. And so after the meeting down in Klamath Falls, there was a much clearer level of understanding about the impact of the formula. Plus there was a lot of ego, frankly, around the formula in the first place because of the people that put it together that thought that it was a great deal. We heard that too. So it's been trying. It's been very difficult, but I do believe that I was surprised at Craig Pope, his support. I mean, as frustrating as it was in the beginning, his comment about paying the in deferral because I want it if you get it. But as he went through, he said, we can't continue it on this path. And he's a voice that people listen to at AOC.
The good news is he understands the construct.
Yes.
There remain a couple of vocal people who don't understand the construct. And so they advanced a motion to convene a subcommittee to continue to look at the construct. And using imagine the TV comics that we used to watch, cartoons on, I used to watch them on Saturdays, where you'd get the cartoon character and their head would explode.
Catherine's head exploded.
We didn't see those.
I had to say, go for a walk.
My head exploded and I was like, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. I've done my part. If you still can't understand the construct, not my fault.
Can I make some just general comment? Because
Sure.
I'm looking at it more from just pure business. And Pam, first of all, I want to compliment you on yesterday trying to explain this was an AOC meeting, not our meeting. And so I think that was important. There were a lot of tensions that I saw in the room. They're not happy. There was some tensions in Clackamas County. That was evident. Putting all that aside, on the construct, if I were just pure business, I don't like the construct. And the reason I don't.
Which construct?
The dues
Dues
construct.
The one that we're
And the reason I don't, and this is just me.
Neither-
Well, first of all, let me go one step back. Paying the 22,000. I said you're either in or you're out. And okay, we do it, and we pay it for it. The reason I don't like construct, I had very little. To me, it's an ROI on what we get. I don't care what our population or assessed value. I don't care about any of that. I'm just saying, what do you provide me, and what do we get? And in any business, you charge what you got to charge to do what you want to do. Now, the only reason we even have any input is because it's an association, which we're a member. Normally, you wouldn't. I mean, you wouldn't go down to your local business and say, I want to negotiate a rate with you. They may or they may not. So the construct is definitely weighted as a discriminatory method to get larger counties to pay more, but there may not be any value in what they're paying for. And I know that wasn't what we want to talk about today, but the construct is definitely a discriminatory method to say bigger you are, you get to pay more regardless of what value you get out of it. So I don't like that construct. Secondly, for AOC, I would never agree to a 3 to 5% if I were on their board. And the reason for it is you don't know what the cost of living is going to be. If all of a sudden wages go up 15% and that's the cost of living, they're going to have to adjust. And so I have a feeling that what they'll do is they'll shine people on and say, okay, great. because this organization, AOC, is gonna outlive anybody on this board. And so they know that they can always keep coming back, different time, different boards and say, gee, I know they agreed to that, but our dues our costs are up 15%. What do you guys want to do about it? So we may kick it down, that's my comment. We may kick it down the road and say, okay, we didn't get it. To me, if they would ever negotiate it, there would be some reasonable base plus cost of living that we all agreed on. That would be a reasonable base. Not the 3 to 5, but having said all that, that's just my comments. I applaud both of you two for what your work is, and let's move on.
The one thing I'd say,
Yeah.
I think you're right, Roy. The one thing I would say is that I believe that this was the first time that the organization has understood that we had the potential to walk away. And I think that the fear, and I'm just being honest here.
Yeah.
I think that there was a realization that we better work with Washington County to understand what the issues are, because it's clear that they haven't given this up over the course of this year, and they have the potential to leave the organization, which would have been a huge pain to them. I mean, that's an enormous. That doesn't mean that I'm not saying that we would have, but the perception that our level of displeasure was that high about this structure. So that's the one thing I'd say back to you, that if in fact they don't adhere to the 3 to 5 as we move forward, then we have the potential to say that's kind of a deal breaker here. I'm just
It won't be
putting,
we though, it'll be different people in the seats. But that's
well,
yeah, and I agree with everything you said. I just think that a reasonable indexing, not 3 to 5, but some reasonable indexing, which we could all agree to. The other thing I would say is I would hope at some point, and I've heard the rhetoric, well, gee, we're all better together, and isn't it great that, they bring some value. Our government relations team is probably doing heavy lifting. Our LUT is doing heavy lifting in regard to all the road issues it's dealing. The benefits for us is the name on certain actions more than actually the work we get out. So I don't
no
belittle that.
disagreement.
Yeah, so I would hope that what would happen is that we come to some understanding of the value. And I know that's not why we're here, but you have done such a great job of moving the dial, this discussion. Why wouldn't they just take one more step and say, okay, this is what we bring to you?
I think that's what the future possibility is.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with you at all. And the reason that I said, and Catherine's not here to say this if she was here, our conversation devolved so quickly yesterday at District 8 that I wanted to keep us focused on our numbers here instead of whether the value proposition. So that was why I made the comment I did
Things
earlier.
were evolving really quick.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah, you guys were managing well, I would say that.
I wasn't in the room for that part.
Yeah, I was watching it.
I was.
That's good.
But it was a great meeting. Thank you for a great meeting. I think I only have one meeting to compare to the prior year, and I thought this was extremely well put together. Very good discussion, good questions. I really enjoyed your icebreaker discussion.
Well, that was Zocker's. I want to make sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that and the discussion and how you facilitated, and you really gave everybody had a voice. Everybody felt, all the legislators and
Not so positive feedback. It just was not for those of us who were online. This was not a Kevin Moss production.
No.
This was, you could barely.
It was close though. It was close, if I may thought though. If somebody was in the room.
It wasn't even close. You couldn't hear half the stuff.
Oh.
It was jerky and
Well, the other person I do want to thank is Jerry for working with Explore Tualatin Valley. I'm trying to remember the
WCVA.
Yeah. And
No WCBA?
well, they're doing business as WCVA, but their tagline. So anyway, thank you for the work that you did with them to retain the sponsorship and to be in a really nice environment. That was,
Mhm.
and it was really interesting to hear the legislators' response to the wingspan, to hear the other commissioners' response to the wingspan. And Roy, to be able to do it at all remotely, we had to use the tools that AOC has.
Yeah, I knew.
So-
That's why I said there was no Kevin Moss.
Kevin Moss et al.
Well, I think we.
Yeah. Yeah, it's even.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to,
So,
the whole thing.
so I guess the question is, are we okay? I'm gonna call the question on the 22,000 over
Sure.
4 years.
Okie dokie, great. Well, we will get your digital signatures on the letter and get that sent on to AOC. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so thank you for not minding that I needed to leave the room momentarily. We are ahead of schedule. Whoops.
Good.
So next, we're going to talk about two interrelated items, the BCC workload look ahead and discussing the initial strategic plan process proposal. And I want to start by thanking Rachel Fuller for continuing to work with the as part of the subcommittee with Ms. Angie, Commissioner Treese, and myself. And Commissioner Treese, do you want to run the presentation or do you want me to?
You go ahead. I was just
Okay.
saying, I feel like I'm on your stage today. So just after the AOC and now this, we are working on other things as well.
It's true. So, we're going to spend a bunch of discussion time on this today. Why we want to talk today is to make sure that we as a board recognize that we've spent a lot of time, but also money in investment to modernize the Washington County organization. And I thank you for that, colleagues. And it's one of the reasons why you've heard me say over and over again, here again today, that I'm really pleased to be part of this very functional board of commissioners and to work with you. But we also have an enormous amount of work ahead of us to continue to deliver county services. And so this is one reason why I wanted to bring these, that sheet is for this afternoon's topic. Why I wanted to bring this for you today. So what, as we've internalized the progress that we made in constructing the initial strategic plan through our roundtables on August 3rd and September 14th, we realized that looking ahead that we still have some work to finish up in that regard. So we're done with the principles, and if those haven't been sent out already, they will be. I've lost track of that myself. Okay, thank you. We do still have some work to do to go over the strategies, objectives, and tactics, both those that I refer to as historic from the prior documents, as well as the new ones that we discussed. We did provide direction at one of those roundtables on one of the topics, specifically on tolling. So we want to make sure that in finalizing an initial strategic plan that we also have the opportunity for input from the Advisory Council on Racial Equity and also from the community. So we as the board have responsibility for each of the strategies, objectives, and tactics that are in the plan. So on this slide, you see, and I can bring, pause for,
I don't know your password.
Pause for a moment.
You all kinds of-
I couldn't figure out how to turn it off, and pardon me for reaching over you.
I was wondering what that would be.
I can't see now.
I don't know
There
where
we go.
that's.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. You've got control over there. So,
What's your timer on some? Okay.
like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Here's, I'll change it later.
We're watching, Roy.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Do we have cameras like it's on?
Changing it after this meeting.
Immediately.
So, where we're at, we still have some work to do in that first box, right? And, we have our November and December roundtables being set up with that. And so essentially what we're going to be coming to is we're going to have a draft document. We'll make that available to Acre and to our public for review, and just like anything else. And we're proposing that we adopt that. Sounds pretty simple, huh? Well, this is where I have some thoughts I want to share with you about what our workload is. So you have a hard copy of my realizing what, do we have a microphone? A portable microphone? Yeah, get comfortable however you would like. I have a pointer to it because do not write on the paper. Or in the microphone. How many times do I have to do that?
Oh,
So if you put it there, like,
that's right. That's,
And we do, yeah.
What's that?
So what I've tried to do here, you know me, I'm a look ahead kind of person, right? So, we've done a lot. I have to make sure I do this for the public too. We've done a lot of terrific work together. So on the very first page, I tried to make sure I bring you on the journey with me through my brain and my strategic thinking. We have 5 major categories of service work in our portfolio as the Washington County government, and you've heard me refer to these. Looks like I better sit down for the sake of the camera for the time being. But I also want to recognize that we've done, together with our staff, a lot of foundation building. And some of it is still in the works. We have the Comprehensive Facility Condition Index that's coming up. It'll be the first time ever we have that. We have additional work happening around our financial and budget planning. There's the community service level assessment that will be coming to us next year. We have been doing work together. Once again, hats off to staff for the capital improvement plan for 3 major categories, right? The critical facilities, the IT, ERP, and transportation. Much underway there. And we'll get to the point of, with the capital improvement plan, having all of our known facility status in there. ERP, we funded the initial plan for that. Our team is working on the acquisition of that. What we have to transition over, all the different policies and processes that need to be documented and moved over at the same time that the bus continues to go down the track with all its wheels on, delivering services to our community each and every day. It's just phenomenal work. We have a great team. We also have an updated strategic plan in the works for HR, a lot of foundation building being done under Ms. Angie's leadership around workforce training and career ladders, employee retention, retirement transitions, hiring, onboarding, updating our personnel policy management so things are actually on that review cycle, labor relations, you name it, a lot in the works. We all know as well through information from Ms. Angie that we have a communications assessment going on right now as well, ultimately to lead towards a strategic plan. We've discussed and are very actively involved with development of updated strategic plans. Hence, where we are right now and my asking for a bit of your time. So I'm just doing the standard Catherine collaborative thing with you and being very open and transparent. What are the key messages? We've been doing a lot of great foundation building so that we have a modern and efficient organization. There's been a lot of foundation building going on in partnership as One Washington County of the board with the organization. So the initial strategic planning, I kind of got in a little bit of a rut. I thought about August 3, right? And we all read the 2 documents in advance of that. Then we had the November 14th and okay, somehow it was all going to be done. It's September 14th, yes, but somehow it was all going to be done. I hadn't really thought about what that means for us. Well, so we have that sorted out now. The principles have been developed, themes are underway. But what I've come to realize is that I think we're going to need to live with that initial strategic plan for longer than at least I realized. So what do you have here? Both electronically, because I sent it to you last night, in paper form on 11 by 17 paper, but also up here in poster form so I could present this to you. What I've come to realize, what you see at the top, and I don't presume you've had any time to look at this, and the same goes for our staff. At the top, I've listed out calendar years, right? Calendar 2023, next year, calendar 24, then the alternating color scheme, white, pink, white, pink, white, pink. This is just a word table. So for example, on your devices, you can widen these columns. And it goes all the way out to the end of 2030. Well, why is that? The big aha that came to my attention was when I was attending one of the local public safety coordinating council meetings. And if you look on page 2, oh no, not page 2, page 3, Public Safety and Justice Journey. We have the paper that's coming next Tuesday. But you see this one row here that says Public Safety and Justice Persistent Problems. At that meeting, there was discussion about pretrial release, and the sheriff and the DA and the judges have been trying to deal with that. Well, Judge Roberts got me to understand, and it wasn't just for my benefit, but I internalized that it is the responsibility of the counties to figure out how to handle pretrial release. And we can't charge bail anymore. And so I realized, ooh, okay, it's up to the counties. Some other counties have more jail capacity than we do. We have the second smallest jail. So we have to come up with the money to do the electronic monitoring of the most dangerous pretrial release. And I thought, well, how long are we going to be living with this problem? One, there's the cash to do the electronic monitoring, but we already have staffing problems in the jails. We have one closed pod. Well, so if we look ahead, when might we have an expanded jail? So that's where I put in this row. We have successfully, part of that foundation building is we, in this year's budget, have planning dollars to work on an expanded jail. It's going to take a couple of years to do that. Then we have to figure out how to finance it. I assume for now, we're going to have to go to the voters for a bond. And then it takes, if you're lucky, just 3 years to construct. That's why this whole table goes out to 2030. I went, holy jamoli. These persistent problems, we've had forced releases weekly since 2015. So that problem continues, as well as these pretrial releases. Now, when there is a new jail wing, we have new jail capacity, but we also have to have the deputies to work there. It's not just deputies, it's the other techs too. So we know it takes at least a year to do that hiring. Then it takes 2 years for them to train up and be certified. So we have to come up with the money for that as well, which then led me to think further about the public safety local operating levy. It expires in June of 2026. Now, remember, when we did a replacement levy in 2020, was the first time that it had been a replacement levy in 20 years. So the general rule is when you define a local option levy, you try to make sure that for your next 5-year or 6-year cycle, I can't remember which it is, 5-year, thank you, Brad, that your next one is just a renewal, which means we have to be thinking ahead about what ingredients we may need in that local option levy. It expires in June of 2022. That's where this fiscal year is up here. I forgot to explain the fiscal year. You don't usually wait until the month before it expires to have it on the ballot. So if we advance that 1 year, that means we need to have it on the ballot in May of 2025, which means we've got to get going PDQ pretty darn quickly on the work for that. Well, thank goodness we have great staff and they're working on the paper and we're looking at what the needs are for the whole ecosystem. It's not just about jail deputies. It's not just about the district attorney. It's also about community corrections and juvenile justice and victims of domestic violence. And as we know, homelessness is a public safety issue, as well as the crisis that we have with substance use disorder, and especially opioids, and now this latest synthetic opioid of fentanyl. So those are big loads, right? That's coming up here. We'll talk about it at a work session in October, but no later than January. All that work has to go on. This is all what's on just the board's plate. This isn't the normal business that staff brings to us. So this whole table does not include land use ordinances, such as with the North Plains UGB, the Tigard UGB, UPAAs, or the Metro UGR UGB. It does not include contracts that are sensitive, right? Ones that end up taking our time, our political time. It does not include our having discussions around broadband investments. It does not include wingspan follow-up items. It does not include how we invest in public health modernization and also the HHS climate adaptation. This is just a quick rundown of what I think is on our plates as a board that is going to require time and political capital. So having explained just that public safety and justice domain, you may be wondering, how in the world does this relate to the initial strategic plan? So let me go back to that. On the very first page, you'll see that there are 3 lines towards the bottom of the page. Our current initial strategic plan process. I was being pretty happy-go-lucky, right? We have our roundtables that we had in August and September, and staff will take us through it. We've got a good consultant helping us with it there. Great. Well, then I realized, process-wise, and this is where Rachel was a big help. We've been developing that plan, and we're finishing up discussion efforts between now and the end of the year. Then there's a draft document that's underway, and we should probably release that for public comment as well, and then adopt that. We have been on the track of also having a comprehensive strategic plan effort. And this is where I had a big aha moment, and I'm presenting it to you today to see what your thoughts are. We've been talking about having a program that has a lot of community involvement. When we talk about a lot of community involvement, that puts it on our plate as well. So staff's been doing great work to develop the RFP. Then they would issue that RFP, get responses, go through the interviewing process, and eventually we would get to the point of work plan development, and that includes an engagement plan. And then we would go over a couple of years at least of development for that and potential adoption. Well, when I got to thinking about all the things that are on our plate as the other rows go into, our budget process, we're still doing a bunch of foundation building there. Our CIP, you see many rows there. The community service level assessment on page 2 is also here. We're going to get that information at the end of Q2 of next year. And then we also have the library levy in the mix. I went, our plate, our cup runneth over. So that's why I wanted to spend some time laying this out for all of you, my colleagues, that I think it's a bit too much, not just for ourselves, but also for our staff. And I think we should delay the work of the comprehensive strategic plan. Excuse me for a moment. Delay the work of the comprehensive strategic plan, which is really disappointing for me, I will say, because it's been something that I ran on it, right? But this is where the initial strategic plan has a lot of value. So we're not abandoning having a strategic plan that is reflective of our 21st century challenges, but the level of going through all of that construction with our community and other things, it needs to be delayed, in my opinion, because we have other foundational things that our community and our staff are relying upon us to do in order to make us a more modern, efficient organization. I didn't mention on page 4, you see there's more around our public safety and justice facilities in operation. New courthouse, we're still in the midst of trying to secure planning dollars from the state. That's going to take effort on our part. We're going to have to be engaged with our staff, but the AOC process and the legislature, and that goes out. Then there's the ERP process, right? We did secure the funding. Staff's going through the work here, and we have some more work to do on that. And I haven't even factored in the equity strategic plan effort. And we also have the reviews that the board has to deliver on. So to summarize, my ask of you is to take a look at what is on our plate. I wanted us to have a shared opportunity of not only me laying this out, but discussion. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions. We may also have some information questions we want of staff. But my clear ask of you is to please consider, in light of everything that's on our plate, delaying the comprehensive strategic plan, which is why I asked that the issuance of the RFP or the approval of the RFP be pulled from our agenda last week so that we could talk about this some more. Yes, ma'am.
I think it's important. I think it's important that you distinguish between, one more time, between the initial comprehensive plan and the comprehensive. Just
the initial strategic plan and the comprehensive strategic plan. Thank you. The initial strategic plan is an effort of the Board of Commissioners taking its knowledge and experience of, of the community, of the organization, and of the challenges that we are acutely aware of, and looking at the strategies that have been in place, that continue to be in place, and to recognize which ones are still working for us and we want to affirm and move forward with, which ones have outlived their usefulness, and embrace whatever new challenges we need to for the next 5+ years. Okay. So this is where in this diagram, my proposal to you is we get it all done and adopted in the early part of next year, and that we live with it for a few years. And what I mean by live with it, it's what helps us with guiding principles and whatnot as we move forward, continue to move forward with all of the policies and investment decision making as reflected in upcoming budgets. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't, I didn't want people to think it was the abandonment. It's the continuation of that initial strategic plan work.
Yep. Yep. It's a pause. Other commissioner thoughts?
I'll jump in since I'm closest to Mike, I guess. Yeah, thanks Chair Harrington and Commissioner Treese for putting all these documents together. I really, was reading it last night, some of the, especially the documents around some of the state requirements, the cremation of veterans. That was a new information to me about the House bill that passed. So, thank you. I think this was a lot of information about the process, and I don't think we can have a conversation about, I'm more interested in knowing and hearing from the staff, like what impacts does this have of the outcome of what was laid out in terms of the strategic planning. So how this impacts the outcome. So can anybody answer?
Ms. Angie, can you articulate what you think that question means to you in
So-
managing the organization?
Yeah, so I think, Commissioner, I'm going to rephrase your question based on how I heard it and then
Yeah,
tell me
absolutely.
if I'm right. So I think what, the chair and Commissioner Treese had talked about within the board subcommittee meetings is just the reality of the work that we have ahead of us. I think the budget and the reality of our budget and budget pressures, that wasn't, the chair didn't dive in deep, but that's real too. And so taking stock of what we can realistically accomplish, both from the board time and something that I and the ACAs are having significant discussion. What is, and you hear me say the cadence of work for the organization too, because I want to take us back to, we made real cuts this last budget, real cuts and real impact to staff capacity. So we do have to be thinking about that. So what does that mean to the initial strategic plan was initially thought of to be a 1 to 2 year time frame. So this is really just extending that time frame to a 4-year period and just delaying the start of the comprehensive plan. So I think it's not abandoning, it's putting into a cadence of work that best supports the community and addressing community needs, board's capacity, and also recognition of staff capacity too. So I think it doesn't abandon anything that we've committed to or we've committed to the community. I think it's about shifting timelines on when those deliverables would be achieved.
Thank you.
I'd like to make another comment here. I think I would ask all of us to, as you look at this, see where you see yourself reflected. Because there's significant work around levies, there's significant work and I'm just realizing now as in my second term, how much work I didn't do on the public safety levy and how much work I intend to do moving forward. I would say the same thing about the library. With the jail coming up, I think that there's even more work. So I guess what I would ask my fellow commissioners is, as you look at this, see where your focus is, see where this is all going to be as well, which is separate from the real issue that we're faced with here. But I think it's important that we all look at these things and think about what it means to us and certainly where the staff sits in relationship to all these things. It's pretty big.
Yeah, this is all about where we, as the Board of Commissioners, and you as individual commissioners, need to spend your time in service to the community as a member of this Board of Commissioners. This is not intended to reflect the number of strategies, topics that we identified in those 2 roundtables. That process will continue through our roundtables through the end of this year. Okay. But this is an attempt to illustrate the full landscape of work that is before us as it relates to the infrastructure that we have underway with the foundation building that's going on right now. Commissioner Rogers or Commissioner Willey, thoughts?
Well, if you've got thoughts, go ahead. I'm still kind of formulating some things here.
Just some general thoughts. One, I concurred early on that the strategic plan, though it needed updating and would have some micro wording differences, that I thought this board was very capable of doing a good first look at it. And then I think we did that. And I think that's terrific. And so pushing that out a little bit and allowing staff to kind of formulate an action plan and work on other things is fine. But I would pose this, Catherine, whether this was a lot of work, I appreciate it, but whether we get a lot out of it, what you got out of it, and that part of us was the enormity of the work that the county does. It's a huge organization, and it pointed out, and this is just a few of the major areas. It points out that there is no board or set of boards or upcoming boards who can tackle everything in any short period of time, and so that's what you depicted. We all knew that, and I think instinctively, but never really visualized it. I would say to this board, because if you start looking out about 24 December, I'm gone. You got a new person you're going to onboard. Then you got another election, and I don't know how many more will be going off this board. But
and this tries to illustrate those opportunities as well, up at the top.
But each one of you, which are on this board at the present time, come with certain skill sets that we don't know will be here in the future. We just don't know. And so I think we try to bite off too much. We should work. If I were king for the day and micromanaging, I would sit there and form a lot of work groups and look at the big picture and see where we'd work. And the work groups would be probably outside experts in various fields and say, okay, well, give me some input on this, and then we can take that out to the public. Public likes to comment, but they like to comment on something. They don't like to comment on nothing. So you got to have something to present to them. My particular interest, and this is nothing new. I've said this before. Before I leave, I'd like to see us have some understanding where we're going on the budget. I mean, the budget deficits that you see are, I think there's more to come, and I challenge Tanya on that, especially when you start putting in a CIP program. It's going to be much bigger. So we haven't seen the worst of it. The bottom is not yet well known. So I'd like to see us work on that. I'd like to see us work on the whole public justice system and figure out a direction, not necessarily an answer, but where we're going with that. And so I'm willing to devote some time. I know Chair asked me, she said, Roy, I'm going to work you pretty hard next year. And I said, unfortunately, you're working me pretty hard right now. I'm working day and night on this 2-week October time frame. But let's get beyond October and we can talk about lots of work. But in that next year, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see us have a comprehensive look at our CIP. I understand what Greg's doing, but I don't fully understand, his methodologies. And we've talked a little bit about that. Need a little bit of understanding on levy work before we ever go out. I mean, what's got to look like? What do we want to envision? And so this board is working very hard. I would give you A's, all of you. Maybe you look at things like a buffet line, though, and we're packing everything up and we can't really eat it all. I mean, there's no way we can do it, and we don't have enough plates to carry all that we see. And so I appreciate the work. I think you, Catherine, you did a good job of depicting what the real challenges are. I think this, I'm being redundant, I think this board, if you could leave any legacy, would be to shape up the issues, maybe not solve them, but shape them up so that those who come after us at least have a shot at hitting the ball. Right now, yeah, and that's what we can do. We can kind of look at it, and thinking that's what this is all about. So that's very generalized, but that's what my thoughts are.
Thank you. Sorry, I moved around. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Commissioner Willey, what do you think?
Well, this is, as you pointed out, is a pretty stark looking. It's good that we have this snapshot of all the stuff that's coming down the pike. This is a lot of staff work, and it's a lot of commission work. I'm trying to, I guess, break apart what our role is versus what staff role would be. I mean, they're going to be coming to us with their work and recommendations and those things, but we're not in this on a day-to-day basis. And then I'm trying to overlay what my personal District 4 committee responsibilities are and the organizations that I'm participating in and our projects that we have. So you put all of that on top of this, it becomes just a little bit of a daunting task. So, but I do appreciate this. I need to be able to look at this. I probably, if I would, I guess I would like to refer to Tanya and just say, if we put this in a, what do we need to get accomplished in the next 3 months? Because there's some things that aren't on here. Okay. And then calendar year 24, how does all of this stack up? And I mean, is it feasible that we get these things done during then? When we talk about the strategic plan, I want to make sure I understand that the pushing back of the strategic plan, that we have ARPA dollars allocated to that. Is that's for the consultant? And we only have till the end of 26 to do that. Does this put that in jeopardy, that we have to have this done by 26 if we use ARPA money to do the consulting and those kinds of things? So how does that come into play here?
Okay, I lost my pen on the way down, so I'm going to go from memory if I'm going to answer all your questions. So as far as what's up the next 3 months, that's the benefit of the rolling agendas that are in your packet. So I would refer to the rolling agendas because even your next 3 months are quite packed. You know, the initial strategic plan, just as you're phasing any project plan or project work, this is really just pushing that out. I think part of today's discussion is for you and your board colleagues to talk about what's on the board's work versus the staff presentation coming at you. So I want to draw some of that distinction. And yet in all of your comments, you said, yes, there is the work we need to do together. But I want to kind of point this conversation back to your board and what direction your board wants to take as a governing and policy board. Relative to the ARPA discussion, part of the comprehensive strategic plan work, the scope of that work was also doing some internal work too. That included creating organizational, whether we call them values or operating principles, how the staff work together as a One Washington County, also implementing countywide engagement survey, and then creating clear and fleshing out just similar but more detailed, just the organizational evolution improvement efforts we're working on. That work would still continue internally. Yes, there'd be board touch points, but it's not going to be a heavy lift for the board. So that would be part of the ARPA dollars. Your board steering committee has a meeting in the upcoming future. Don't have that date memorized, but part of that conversation is looking at reallocation of unused funds, because as per your board's direction, to ensure that we don't turn back $1 at the end of the expiration is still that commitment.
So that happens, that ARPA meeting for this board happens in December, right? One of those two meetings. I believe it's the very first Tuesday meeting. To reinforce on the ARPA funding towards strategic planning, we have been putting those dollars into action through the initial strategic plan. We also, as a board, did a good job of reviewing those two existing documents and discussing. There was a lot of discussion about, wow, a bunch of these concepts still pertain. So we're leveraging that information. We also talked about concepts that are in there, but didn't seem to be implemented, but we are now, a lot of it around workforce, career ladders. And then briefly identified a few that maybe don't pertain to the 21st century, but more importantly, what ones we also want to discuss further. And so that's part of what we'll be picking back up on through our discussions in November and December, so that we can finish the initial strategic plan. To be clear, in my mind, what is different between the initial strategic plan and a comprehensive strategic plan is doing a full community-wide engagement and bringing in an outside consultant to say, okay, if we want to start over with a clean sheet of paper with best known practices, what should we do to build a strategic plan that can serve this community for at least 10 years and maybe even longer? But I don't see us as just the board having the bandwidth to execute the engagement plan as our community might expect us to do for such a comprehensive multi-decade strategic plan.
And as we should do.
And that, frankly, that was a hard pill for me to swallow. But I also know that our community is relying upon us and our staff is relying upon us to deliver on many of these other things and continue doing that foundation building that we have been doing. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, this is obviously a pretty deep topic. So it takes a lot to process a little bit
Yeah,
for me.
yeah. And I perfectly understand that. This is where my brain has been living for the last 3 weeks.
Well, it's a good work product because it does put a lot of stuff out in front of us.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a nice wide open. Okay. And it, as you've identified, there was a more probably than a couple aha moments.
Yes.
So it's good for us to be able to see that, I guess.
Chair, to maybe help answer Jerry's question, because
Yeah.
we dove deep into this. I know you and Pam have a PowerPoint, but maybe to go through the slides of process and timeline,
Yeah,
that may be helpful to kind of just frame the initial strategic plan process and what's ahead.
Okay.
it's okay if I just sit here. Sure. Yeah. Could we go back to the PowerPoint slides? So this is where process-wise, oh, sorry, we were on the right one. Did I do something wrong? That's the one. Yeah, so Ms. Angie was suggesting we come back to this process slide. So this is what we would have ahead of us to complete our conversations, have a in essence, a draft document that pulls all that together. Providing it to the Advisory Council on Racial Equity. Making sure that we're being tried and true in looking at our responsibility for the different elements of the strategic plan. Then putting it out there for our community for public input and then adopting it. So there's that. So for the next slide. So today we wanted to propose that process, right? Highlight that we're setting up the November and December roundtables for that further facilitated discussion. If it takes us a little bit longer, yes, of course, we've got the month of January into, it takes as long as it'll take, but culminating in getting a draft initial strategic plan available for public review and then subsequent a month later adoption.
I think I'd like to have Tanya participate in this conversation as well as to how we're going to do this.
So if I could take your attention back to the first page of the hard copy document, and it's also the electronic version. Down in the bottom under KH key messages, there's a bullet today, October 5th, KH proposal, introduction to the BCC load look ahead and what is before us. Introduce a proposal to complete adoption of an initial strategic plan and delay the comprehensive strategic plan program. Then the second bullet under that, proposal, initial strategic plan process. And then, wait. Oh, no, here we go. I meant in the first bullet, towards the end, all the way to the right, staff is already working on the major focus areas list and the cadence of work that they can deliver on. And that's information that's coming in these future roundtables. So this is my view as a commission member for us, right? But they're also looking at all those other foundational pieces, some of which are highlighted here at a high level, right? But they're looking at it at much more of their brass tacks level and that cadence of work. So that information that I hear you asking for from Ms. Angie about what this means for staff and how does this all come together, that's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense?
It does make sense, and I just want to lift up as we go forward. I think through this process, it's really important that we're all clear on scope of what we can accomplish at this point in time, because part of what I see this initial strategic plan, it still is flying up here. Then you have further detail that comes underneath. But if you would ask me if we're coming back with a process for jail expansion that's detailed with timeline, that's not happening yet. We're just going through the initial step of the jail capacity. So I think for all of us, we have to keep the initial strategic plan is up here, and then there's further steps to detail the work underneath. So I want to right size expectations as we move forward, so we are all on the same page.
Well, I think where I was going, Tanya, and you've seen this, because this is what I have to do to keep my head straight, is I've listed my priorities or priority things that I want to see that we're going to have to do between now and the end of the year and maybe even first quarter. It's the TLT discussion we're going to have later today. It's the wingspan report and that, what we're going to be doing with that. It's the ARPA dollars it's the WCVA contract, all these things. These are not necessarily things we're going to be doing. These are things that your staff are going to be doing.
Oh, but all those things you listed
Mhm.
have us as part of the decision making. Yes,
Yeah,
I'm with you.
The project comes to us
Yep.
at the end of the day. That's true, but
Yep.
we've got staff time developed in that. MSTIP, SIP,
Yep.
public safety, all that kind of stuff is in process right now and is going to come across our plate at some point in time. So I look at those as a staff time engagement. So we've got their plates pretty full, and then we show them this document, and you go, "Wow, how's those two fit together?"
So I think that's where I think the
This
chair and
doesn't,
Pam-
this isn't adding anything that isn't already on their plate.
I know. I was just saying. So how do we do that? It's kind of like,
So staff are working on the focus area list, which I previously have sent to your board. This is just a working document. It's not ready for public release. So I want to underscore that. Feedback that I've received from several of you is that was really helpful to see. And you would like to see in areas of that focus area list that we can break out some higher level timelines to break out that timeline to highlight what is the clear board role. So staff is working on that, and that's also the guidance your board subcommittee gave us.
I think that you can't combine those two. This is really okay, what's up here and how does the future look from now until 2030? That's a long time. And what are the big pieces? The focus areas are really reflective of your list and what's happening there. So, and this is no different than any business that operates with long-term concept that they have to engage with. I mean, I just think it gives us the opportunity to think about what's coming up, where are we going to be engaged in these big things, and then your focus areas are also kind of the day-to-day more work that we're doing.
The good news is we're all trying to get to similar destinations.
mhm.
Yep. And we're bought in on the objectives and what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, the other thing is, I didn't hear anybody say there is no disagreement what these topic areas are. So, to me, that's a big piece. And by the five of us coming together, and Roy, you're to your point, who those next five what the mix is going to be, having this under our belt and awareness gives us an opportunity to work more effectively together.
So
I'm in favor of the initial, moving toward the initial comprehensive plan.
the initial strategic plan.
Sorry, strategic. At least I'm not saying interim anymore. I'm saying initial. So that's good. And I would ask the opinion of others around the table.
I've already stated at the very beginning that's where I thought we ought to be, that we're smart enough around the table to come up with what needs to be done. Then we're painting with big brushes. Others will paint with the fine ones later on.
Commissioner Willey,
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Commissioner Fye?
I'm still digesting all this information. It sounds like we have enough thumbs up to move forward.
So I don't know what that means. Does that mean that you're not going to be on the journey with your colleagues, or do you reject this, or what?
I'm digesting the answer I got from Tanya around the question of how will this process change impact the outcome that we've agreed previously. And when you were listing the foundations being built, what I put down was 80-20, because I do think a lot of these are 80% of the work that staff are gonna do, but I do see ourselves as the decision makers or the legislative body for the county. There will be about decision-making, approval, direction given to the staff, so no agreement on what role the board plays in this 80% of the work that staff are doing. In terms of focusing on initial and what this means, I think I just need to see what this timeline, so this isn't about a question of being on the journey, but a question of learning what this means for Washington County and how this impacts the work that we've already committed. So I just need to see what the facilitated discussion on November looks like. But these are all great work and a lot of big topics coming forward to us, so.
So what I hear is you don't disagree with the fact that all these big things are on our plate and that we have a process in place to come to completion on the initial strategic plan, and you're looking forward to those conversations.
Very well summarized.
Okay. All righty. Terrific then. That was the end of this topic. We do have one more topic for today's roundtable. I don't know how much time you need, Commissioner Willey, and I do know that you have an obligation that you need to step out for at 11:15. So there are two things I can think of. The first one is that we break at this point and come back after lunch to our remaining topic. Or option two is other plan that you come up with.
Well, I think I got about 30 minutes. And I think
How long you got for here?
45 minutes starts at 11:30. I just need a few minutes to prepare for that 11:30. So probably 12:30 before I'd be back.
I ask you more than anybody understand mine. The gun, right?
Yeah. So I'm saying maybe I could just do the TLT conversation right now.
I would love it. 'Cause that's the last thing we got to deal with.
Yeah, and then you can go get some productive hours in.
Yay.
Would you do my tax return while you're working on that?
You owe a bunch, buddy.
So yeah, so I think to start the conversation, you all have this in front of you. It's a two-sided document. And the purpose of this is, and I don't need this because I didn't do any slides, so we don't have to worry about technology there. I think they're going to bring in Catherine's favorite slide projector, and that is the whiteboard. So, because there are some things that I just want to toss, and the reason I asked to do this is because the TLT conversation is a little, has the ability to kind of get spread like peanut butter all over. It impacts the WCVA contract that we're talking about. It impacts wingspan and operational money and capital money potentially. It gives us an opportunity, if we look at this, it gives us an opportunity to see what modifications we can make to not only the WCVA agreement, but how we use some of the TLT money. So thank you, sir. So this first document here on the front page there, across the top of it is where we are currently right now. Okay, so the Fairplex gets about a total $17 million. Fairplex gets, and this is just the 9%, remember? It's not the total, this is just the 9% that we deal with. 1.9 for Fair Complex, 4.4 for WCVA, 1.3 for the event center. Cities get 4.3, county gets 5.1. And so if we look at that, we have, and in the conversations, we have said that the WCVA has pretty considerable amount of reserves right now. They're anticipated, as the top line shows, about $4.4 million to come in this year, and their budget wasn't that. Now they have started off on a new program, of course, for emphasizing Tualatin Valley. And so they're spending a little bit more money on marketing, but I think their basic budget was about $3.3 million. So you can see with a budget of 3.3 and they're going to get revenues of 4.4, their reserves are going to go up under that premise. Like I said, they've got a marketing program that's going to spend some of that. But so I advocated that we have a couple of options. We cap it. The next box down, we cap that at $3.5 million. And what that does
That's
is,
capping WCBA.
right. Yeah, that's the only one really that we have.
We have
Any
authority.
options in.
I just want to make
Yeah.
sure I'm.
The rest of them,
journey.
we can't, okay? So the WCVA, we cap it at $3 million. And then if you go over to the right-hand side over there, and it's under the new HOPS dollars, I'll explain that in a minute, but it says that basically we would pick up about $700,000 in that, okay, by just doing that. And then we would have $221,000 for other things. So about $925,000 would come about by capping the WCVA money specifically at 3.5. The next box down says if we did it at 3.3. And so we have, in that particular case, about $1.2 million available to do that. So you say, well, we need to be working with WCVA on this. And certainly that will be in the contract negotiations. But for right now, these are just things I'm throwing up there, okay? If you flip it over, I had heard that we do all the variables, and maybe what I should do is toss out what are all of those variables. So if we just hit the pause button and we say, we'd like to have some money to do these things, what would that be? Well, we've talked about the HOPS and their ask of a $10 million support to their project. WCVA has talked about a $2 million contribution to that, which would mean ours would be $8 million. Okay. And so bonding of $8 million is about $650,000 a year for 20 years. Okay. So if we say that's in the pot for consideration, if we talk about the wingspan, we've talked about we need an operational bucket because annually we don't think we can make this a profitable venture, at least initially. And remember, we're going to be talking to WCVA about the sales and marketing responsibilities with that. So there's more to come with that. But if we look at
Plus
strictly,
capital reserves too on wingspan.
right, that's where I'm going. So two buckets of the wingspan, capital reserves and operational reserves.
Got it.
I heard a couple of numbers in there. I heard 750 for that total amount. I heard $1 million in there. So that's why you have on the backside, you have capped to free up 1.76 million annually.
Wait, where are you?
Flip
Second
over your
page.
piece of paper.
Yeah, okay,
When you're
cap to free up, got it.
Yeah.
all the rest of them, the cap, it comes over to what WCBA has. It says 176, but this one says 267. It says 3.3, but over here it says 3.99.
Okay, I don't know where you're at, Ray.
Oh, I'm on the second page.
He's following this and this.
Okay,
It says you're capping them at 1.76 annually, but it says I get 2.67. I didn't understand that.
2.67. If we said we needed 1.76 annually, that's what WCVA's part would be.
To free up that much money means they only get that amount.
Right.
It's here.
Yes, it's a different methodology. This one is capping WCVA. This one is freeing up.
So we're backing into the third number of 1.76.
Yes.
We're saying if we need 1.76, what's that? What does that have left over for WCVA's
I see.
allocation? So that would be a 2.6. So that'd be, pretty significant step down, but that's what we're talking about. And there are reserves there.
How much are the
back
reserves?
9 million.
So they have 3 years worth of operations on hand.
Correct. 9 million is what they have in savings, and they have a pretty good amount in checking account about as well. I saw the last numbers I saw, I think was August.
But out of that 9 million, 9 million, they're planning on allocating 2 million towards
The hops.
the hub.
Yeah. So yeah,
But they
the 9
still
million.
are left with
Yeah.
healthy reserves.
2 years worth of reserves.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question here?
Sure.
So this is based on, we're obviously talking about TLT. And this is the current TLT income, so to speak,
Mhm.
not any projections for any growth or decrease in TLT.
No,
Okay, I'm just,
the fourth box,
it's a variable. I just am pointing that out.
but the fourth box kind of falls into that category.
Because
We
you talk
said
about
if we-
5% growth.
If we capped about a 3.3, if we capped them at 3.3, gave them a 3% COLA increase and had a 5% growth in TLT.
COLA increase.
So there's a
Okay.
whole bunch of variables in there, And I don't know that I would plan on a 5% growth in TLT initially over the few years, because as Catherine has pointed out, we've got a little bit of a Portland hangover impacting our tourism industry. And so, so that's, again, put a lot of numbers out there. But the purpose of this conversation was just to say, what things do we have out there that fall under the tourism category? Remember, we got 100% of this has to go to tourism. It's not the 70-30 under the new rates. It's 100%. So we've talked about hops. We've talked about the wingspan operations and capital. We've talked about park at Hag Lake.
Campground.
Yeah, campground out at Hag Lake. Now we've kind of talked about Metro Parks money doing that, but I just throw that out there as an opportunity. We've got
So Hague Lake, Eagles Rest, Cooper Mountain all fall under the tourism concept, correct?
yes.
I'm not so sure about Cooper Mountain, but
Oh.
having a campground at Scoggins.
Does, I understand.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what
Those
I'm
are-
asking.
Those are new visitors.
Yep.
To Washington County.
So increase, okay.
So the good news is we have some opportunity not only by reallocating some of the TLT money and not significantly impacting WCVA. I mean, they've got plenty of reserves to draw from, and I think we could give them that direction if that's what we wanted to do. And certainly would want to have this conversation with Dave. They're a great partner, and so we want to make sure everybody's marching to the same drummer, okay? So if you want to, I think where we need to be kind of honing in on is particularly for me, the HOPS bonding fund. That seems to be, obviously, that's a big item. It's a $8 million ask on our side, a $2 million ask, so a $10 million total out of TLT money. And they have a $20 million gap that this will take care of half of it, and they're trying to get the state to match that. I think it's a message that we are pretty strongly sending. I think what the HOPS would be more than willing to do is show us an economic impact of what the baseball team does for us in the county, and certainly here a little bit closer in Hillsborough. So yeah, there's a lot of statistics I think that need to be communicated. but, that has to be in the conversation.
So another question.
Mhm.
The TLT tax comes from obviously our hotels.
Mhm.
And what is our headroom? Do we have any concept of what our headroom is? Reason I'm asking the question is if there's more events and does that increase the growth rate of the TLT? That's the question. I'm
That's a good
asking.
point. Yeah.
Increase the revenues annually?
Yeah, if you've got a stadium that attracts concerts and different things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that was, do we have any, is that in the HOPS projection?
Well, I'm going to say yes. I will let them answer for themselves, but under the new MLB program, the players get paid better, so they stay in hotels rather than with people around the community. Several of our friends have been hosting these players, not only the Hops players, but then when the visiting teams come, they stay in hotel rooms as well.
To me, that's little in comparison to a giant concert.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that part of it, I haven't seen their economic impact on projections on that. But yeah, I'd have to say that if they're going to bring, I don't know, 20,000, 10,000 people, I don't even know what the capacity of the stadium is. Yeah, then those folks would stay in town or at least frequent our restaurants and those kinds of things.
So what I hear you asking about is we have the current hotels with current capacity. I know we've seen current room night utilization, and those graphs are in the WCBA packets, and I've shared all the WCBA packets with Commissioner Willey, but I can't remember. There's a graph in there, and I just can't summarize it right now. I don't know how long it will take a new stadium to open up. So can I draw
On your whiteboard.
Yes, there you go.
I better take the microphone. So there's a curve, and it's not a sign, but there's a curve for room utilization over an annual year,
Mhm.
right? 1 year. Then there are some number of years. At some point, I'm just gonna, for general terms, say there's 3 years of construction. Okay, so there's the
lag.
room utilization until it's built. And then there's whatever, well, and then once it's open, what the future utilization is. So I believe Commissioner Willey's current calculations are just taking this current utilization TLT run rate and calculating that out. So out in the future, there could be new hotels built that generate more revenue. That's just upside. But also, I believe his proposal is also taking into consideration ensuring that there are reserves for WCVA to continue to do its promotional responsibility so that if there's another 2-year pandemic experience, right, that the organization still functions.
And this takes into account WCBA's potential to support the bandwidth, to support the wingspan,
Yes.
potentially.
Well,
That's the other question.
Well, remember how that comes about is by reducing the amount of TLT that the WCVA receives now, and the delta, that's what I'm doing here. The delta is what we slide over and say, now we have $960,000. What are we going to do with that? How would we redo that? And it doesn't impact WCVA's operations.
Okay.
Where is that in these tables?
Okay, the probably going back to
Because we have the event center debt service.
yep. That's on, I'm sorry, at the top first box front page. That's what we're talking about. Capping WCVA at 3.5, capping WCVA at 3.3. Off to the right-hand side is the calculation. The hops is actually 708,000. So my calculation was smaller. And then $221,000 versus $421,000 of extra. And now we've said, well, wait a minute. We've said we need $750,000 here just for wingspan. Okay. So we don't have that in that particular thing. So what would we have to do if we included the 750 for, actually I used $1 million. Let's say $1 million for wingspan and the 700 for the hops, then we'd have to have the 1.76. And that's at the top of the back page.
Got it.
Okay. So I've tried to just throw about a bunch of variables in there. Those numbers can change. But the point being that we have the opportunity to do this because we have the reserves of the WCVA right now to backfill whatever budget reductions we would ask them to do. So if we'd ask them to, we'd say you only get $2.6 million, you're $700,000 short. You need to start rolling that out of your reserves. So what does that look over a period of time? And then do we get an increase in TLT in the next few years? And so that gets mitigated as well. So we've got a 5-year agreement that's coming at us. And again, I really don't want to get into the WCVA contract negotiations on this, but I'm just saying that we have funds available to do some of these things that we want to.
So if I'm following you, you're asking us, are we open to continue discussions to support a HOPS funding program of $8 million from TLT? So let me answer that for you. I am currently open to that, but I need more context information, such as you've touched on the current economic development impact statement for the first full year of full season HOPS baseball, recognizing that's changed. It's now full season versus short season. In addition, this year, or is it next year, is the first year of players getting paid full salary.
23 we just finished that.
Yeah,
first.
so another first year. And additionally, what I'm hearing is that the TLT that the county has policy direction over can also be used to cover a portion of the local share that we're obligated to, given the federal grant for a Scoggins campground that would provide for tourism.
So staff have not done that analysis with the law. So I want to just underscore, I think
I'm not sure what analysis
we're
you're talking about.
looking at allowable uses of TLT. So Commissioner Willey is bringing this to you.
Yeah.
Staff have not done any of that work.
So that's another information piece.
Maybe I should have cast that with this. That's my interpretation of how we can use TLT. But
Correct. We
Yeah.
need to do that work.
So those are two key information pieces for me, because I am not in favor of using the Metro local share to cover all of that obligation. So I've been pretty clear on that. We'll have further discussion about that. But I remain open, and I appreciate your working out these possible options and providing us with next step opportunities.
So I have one more scenario to throw at you.
Okay.
We increase the 9% to 10%. We have to go to the voters to get that. 70% of it's tourism, 30% of it goes to general fund. That's $2 million a year is a 1% bump.
That 70-30, is it only on the increase past 9%?
The last time the commission actually could have done the 70-30, but they said, nope, we're gonna go 100% tourism on that last little percent that went from 8 to 9, I think.
Correct.
And so now we're going from 9 to 10, we have another, we can make that decision to be 70-30. So we just say, we're just gonna put it out there, it's a tourism tax. But we have the ability to put 30% of that in general fund. So I'm just
But
tossing
this-
this out here because.
But the same split goes to, we'd have to have this, do we reconfigure all these?
No,
Those stay the same.
70%.
The
that
cities,
bucket.
okay. I just want to make sure I understand what. Probably.
Right.
And the cities also have their own opportunity of a TLT and they don't have to go to the voters for that.
Yeah, that was,
They don't.
Nope.
Beaverton's is, I think the TLT in
Beaverton,
Beaverton is
Hillsborough,
like
they've all
16,
started.
Hillsborough's 14. So anything above 10 goes to the cities.
How would that be financed going to the ballot?
How would we pay for the cost of taking it to the ballot?
Mhm.
Well, we'd have to pay that presumably. Again, it's a.
Betting on the outcome. And I
The
understand.
attractive part of it is that we're not taxing our constituents, we're taxing tourism.
Right.
So that's the attractive part. I'm not a big tax person, tax incentive person, but
There's already 2024 is a major election year.
mhm,
We already have county items on the ballot with 2 districts. So that's where it being an even year has lesser cost impact to a countywide effort. But I think more to the point, before I would want to weigh in on any such proposal, I would want to hear from the lodging industry about their feedback. And I would imagine they would want more assurance that such a proposal would yield more tourism opportunity for them.
yeah,
And the other-
absolutely. We'd have to partner up with the hoteliers and
Yeah.
the restaurant.
And the other question is, why would we go to 10 when our municipalities are at a number higher than 10?
Because the 1% gets added onto theirs from the standpoint of, so
Oh, okay.
at some point in time, we reach.
above.
I
We
get it.
don't want to
So
be
that's,
too expensive. in
got
the
it.
TLT.
so that,
Or-
so we bump Beaverton. then.
Right.
Okay.
But I
Beaverton's
also
go
want to
from 16
double
to
check the legality of, I know we would have to go to the voters. But I just want to make sure the provision of the general fund use, that's all.
Yeah, and
I'm just
again,
not that conversant in all the particulars.
yeah. And the purpose of this being at a roundtable is that this is just conversation starter.
Yep.
Okay, kind of coming attractions.
Yep.
Because like I said, staff's gonna be working with WCVA on their 5-year contract. We've got wingspan opportunities and challenges.
When do we have to make, what kind of timeline is this decision making on?
On the hops or on just TLT in general? The hops is probably sooner than later. MLB gave them a deadline of September and then extended it. I don't know how much of an extension.
Because the soonest we could go to the ballot would be May. So we're not going to have those results certified till June.
May for what?
For an increase in TLT.
The TLT has to be done in November.
Oh, it has to be done in a general election?
Can't do it in May.
And are they linked? I mean, it doesn't appear that they're linked necessarily. Your
Right.
scenarios aren't.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it needs to be laid out a little more clearly. I mean, these are all the numbers, but definition of this scenario,
Scenarios, yeah.
definition of
Okay.
this scenario.
I can put some definition to that. Again, I just been working on this week.
No, this is great detail. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, yeah.
Couple of questions. First of all, Jerry, thank you. And you've raised the discussion about what we can do with these funds. Brad, one for you, and this goes back to the whole definition of how are these public funds, are they not public? And I know we're working through a nonprofit. We're filtering through this. They're public funds. There was an AG opinion many years ago that reviewed it, saying that a public entity couldn't give to a private entity funds. They had to be used for a public purpose. So Wingspan definitely is. I'm not certain Hops would be. So if I don't expect you to say anything off the top of your head, but just take a look and say, are these public funds and how can they be used? I think would be good. Anya, what would be really, really nice, and I don't know that you have time to do this, you have time to do a lot of things, nor do we. But one more thing is that what are our big tourist attractions in Washington County? Parks obviously are one.
Wineries.
WCBA can give that to us.
Mhm.
Can we get that?
Mhm.
We can look at, options. Three, on the bonding, if you can back you, Brad, these are revenue bonds. I don't know what the collateral is being put up. I guess it would be probably the good faith of the county. If this is a private enterprise, I don't know that there's a clawback on the assets. They might own them. So if we don't claw back, what happens is if things go belly up or they move away, then does the public continue to pay on bonds? This enterprise is long gone. So I'm just understanding, I need to understand the bonding thing.
Good question.
And Jerry, it's a good idea, but I go back and probably nobody here sitting here remembers this, but the Blazers looked at Washington County at one time, and we didn't get very deep in, but they were going to locate at what's now Bridgeport Village. They liked that big spot and they saw all the transportation alternatives. By the time we preliminarily looked at it, what it was going to cost us and the guarantees, we said thanks, but no thanks. I mean, Portland, you can do that if you want, but we didn't want to get that deeply involved. It was just too much of a risk. So I don't know. I'm not opposed to Hops at all. I just don't know all those details and collateral and revenue bonds. Can we claw back? And is this giving public money to private enterprise? And what other opportunities are there? So,
Well, and I think to your point, Roy, those are great questions. To your point is the annual cost that I showed you there is because of it is a taxable bond,
right.
not a tax exempt, and that means that bumped up the price a couple of percentage points on the interest rate.
You'd still be a guarantor though.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great point. I think I might have another option to that, but for right now, yeah, those are good questions. We need, again, eyes wide open on this thing. So, okay, I have 8 minutes I have to get to.
Yep.
Thank you.
The next one.
Yep. Okay.
And so, yeah, I'm glad we were able to get this done before noon. So, Roy, go forth and
Anything else,
do
everyone?
something good today.
Nope, that's it for today's roundtable. Have a good afternoon. Thank you. We're adjourned.